Welcome to Speakernomics, the official podcast of the National Speakers Association, brought to you by Leadership Books. I am Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. And like you, I'm a professional speaker, and I love listening to Speakernomics. It's the professional speaker show that will help you thrive and grow a speaking business so you too can change the world, one keynote, session, workshop, and speech at a time. And on this episode, we welcome Justin Jones-Fosu. He is a CSP who speaks internationally on meaningful work and inclusion. He's a social entrepreneur, author, former radio host, and the founder and CEO of Work Meaningful. Justin, welcome to Speakernomics. How are you today?
I am loving the journey. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for allowing me to be here.
Absolutely. Now, to all my speaking friends, how are you selling beyond the single engagement? Do you even have an action plan? It's not easy. Are you using the right language to keep things going? Do you even have an aftercare plan to do all this? Biggest question of all is it making a true impact in your speaking business? And before we jump in, make sure to go to speakernomics.com. That's where you can find the tips, insights, knowledge to help you become a better speaker, build a better business, and get paid to speak. Justin, let's dive in. First of all, help us understand, you spoke about this at Influence. This was one of the great sessions. Why people look forward to going to Influence to get this kind of content is the 10 by 10 by 10 model. So talk about that model for producing more valuable content for the clients and audiences to help drive more of our speaking business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ken. I mean, one of the things kind of to give the foundation behind this is something I call the PhD speaker, right? And so it's helpful to understand this as we go into the 10 by 10 by 10. So what I learned and really dove in, I planned on doing a PhD at one point, did research in academy management, all that kind of stuff.
I thought that was poor, hungry, and determined. That's what we all, that's where we start out. Yeah.
Then I am definitely a PhD. But what we learned in undergrad, we were taught to memorize knowledge. We're in master's level, we're taught to master knowledge, right? And then in PhDs, they're taught to create new knowledge. And what I realized that for a long time in my career as a speaker, I had spent a lot of time just kind of memorizing and, sharing other people's stuff, right? And, such and such said, John Maxwell says, right? Which is nothing wrong, but I didn't have anything of my own. Then I began to master it, right? And I started adding some pieces of my own, but I realized that the truly powerful and successful speakers in many ways are the ones who have created new knowledge. They've added to their body of work. And so I said, how do we do this? So the 10 by 10 by 10 model came forward because I was like, there has to be some practices and principles from my PhD preparation. I went to the PhD project and all these kind of things. And what I said, well, what if we created a speaker lit review, right? So in lit reviews for the PhDs, you have to do an extensive body of research on a certain topic. And I was like, well, what would that look like for a speaker? And so the 10 by 10 by 10 is simply this: to identify in your core topic, in your area, who are the top 10 people currently speaking about your topic, right? And so that's not always speakers per se. That's sometimes experts that work at universities, and they may be doing TEDx's or TED Talks or other things, even if they're not on a speaking circuit. And so just identifying the top 10 people, and now you're looking at their website, their information, all those pieces that are a part of what they share. The next step is, what are the top 10 books on your specific topic? And, the way I go about that is, going on Amazon, look at the ratings, read some of the reviews, I look how many people, what type of reviews. And again, this is not always people who are well known. Some of these people are flying under the radar, but like Juliet Minson in some of my work, she's not a speaker, but she's a Harvard professor, and she does some really quality work in my space. And then the last one, which is the funnest for me, right? It's, what are the top 10 peer-reviewed journal articles on your topic? And the reason that's fun is because now you're getting into some primary data. You're learning about what was the research behind that. What were some of the examples? And I can give you a study on hospital cleaners, and I can talk to you about these two different groups of hospital cleaners, that one that saw themselves as extensions of the mission of the hospital, and another group that just saw themselves as simply hospital cleaners, and how it impacted their performance. Why that's important is because now I'm diving a step deeper to identifying practical research-based ways that allow your topic, your conversation to come alive. And people struggle like, well, where do I go? There's a lot of great places. Google Scholar. for one. It's a free tool that you can type in your specific topic and ask for research on it or aspects of your content. Number two, if you graduated from a university, a lot of alumni associations, if you are up to date, will allow you access to the online library. So you can go back and go to EBSCO and other things that give you that access. And three, you can go to some of the universities and or your public libraries to go and do the research. Now, if you do that, and this is the question people ask, so I'll give this and I'll be quiet, is I don't read all the articles. Now, for my last book, I read over 100 peer-reviewed journal articles. But what I'm doing is I'm first looking at what is the abstract. So that little summary about what it's all about. And then I'm looking at what are the results and areas of future study. And I'm identifying, is this something in line with my topic? Is it something that I want to dive in deeper to? And so that then, if it is, I'll flag it and I'll utilize and read it later. And I'm really looking for what are the top 10 articles that everybody keeps referring to, right? What are everybody keeps putting into theirs, right? Who's the number one, number two, number three cited in all of these articles? And that leads me to identifying that those top 10 peer-reviewed journal articles. That, coupled with this, allows you to ask this question. What is everybody saying that's common, that's known, that I should continue to echo? But the real question, Kenneth, is what's currently missing? What's not being said or what's not being said well, where I can add to this body of work? That is what allows us to operate more from that PhD speaker level.
Well, as someone who basically graduated from the 13th grade at a public university, I'm very proud of your comments. So let's then dive in a little bit further and talk about the language, the specific language that you need to keep that conversation going, because I think that's very tactical. It's going to be a great insight from you, both before and after the event. We need to look at the language we use to uncover these new opportunities.
Yeah. So I want to share, before I dive into the language, I want this to be a heart-based approach, right? Because I've seen some people try to utilize this as some techniques to get more out of people. And I don't want to do that. I really want people from the heart-based, how do we add more value to our clients? Because I think when we add more value and we give more to them, I think it really does come back to us. So for pre-event, some of the language that we will do, and I'll give you both kind of what written as well as verbal, is I always ask, at the end of the event, what do you want your people thinking, believing, and doing differently? And when I ask that question, it allows me to say, if I'm in that 60-minute keynote or presentation, if I'm not able to do that, I'm able to then plant seeds with them to share how we can actually do that. So say, Kenneth, you say, hey, Justin, I want our people to go back to work, enjoying Mondays, identifying ways that they can contribute to the job and taking ownership. Well, I'll say, wow, like I'm really grateful to be a catalyst to be able to do this on stage. But what I'd love to do is after I get off stage and we set up a call, that we can have a conversation to continue the impact, to make sure that the conversation lasts longer than the 60 minutes I was on stage. And those are things that people are like, oh yeah, I love that, right? Because those are the questions or the statements that people want to do. Another thing that I usually share is I'll share, I know you're likely don't want to check the box speaker, right? Where you just need somebody to come in and check the box. You really want to have true impact. And I'd love to share some practical ways that we've seen true impact work with some of our past clients. Right? Now, none of these are hardcore salesy. None of these are, if you just for $10.99, you step in line, right? Like it's none of those things. I'm asking ways that we can add more value. And I'll give you the last one for pre is, I really want to find ways that I can add more value to your experience, to your conference that lasts longer than me being on stage. And so those are some of those key words: value, impact, keeping the conversation going, that are really helpful for me to plant seeds before an event. Now, one thing that I'll do when I'm doing the proposal, utilizing the amazing Lori Guest and her sweet spot pricing, And I'm utilizing and I'm including things that we'll talk about when we get to aftercare that could help to continue the conversation in each of those packages. So I'm making sure that I'm able to add more value. Now, post, after, if you're having a client call with them or you're sending an email, I'm saying, hey, I'd love to continue the conversation. And I actually talked to Kenneth right after the keynote, and he was like, oh, I loved your information on meaningful work and how to bring meaning to my day. And I'd love to dive in deeper. And I was like, hey, we have some information, some ways to do that with some of our videos, our e-learning course that actually walks people through our meaningful day template. Would that be something that you think could add value to your members? Right. So these are some of the things, and I'm asking the questions, I'm attaching it, and I'm not using fake information. I'm not creating fake people. I'm only sharing this if people are real, in ways that we can add value afterwards. And the last thing that I'll will likely say is if you feel like we've done a really, really good job for you, we feel like we've just hit the surface on the impact and value that we can provide. And we'd love to continue the conversation. And for me, that's what keynoting is, right? That's what presenting is. That's what training is. It's having a conversation with people. It's not just me up there sharing how great and grand I am, right? It's me sharing practical content, having aha moments, even if they're not verbally contributing, they're thinking, they're having a conversation with you. They're saying, oh, I don't think that's going to work. Or they're saying, like, wow, I can really do that. Or they're coming up with their own philosophies based upon your content. And it's our job as trainers, as speakers, as consultants to continue that conversation beyond just our 60 minutes to 90 minutes on stage. And so that's why having a 10 by 10 by 10 model actually helps us to have more value than we're able to initially give in our keynote. So I know we're going to go to somewhere next, but
Yeah.
it's all
Well,
tied together. Go ahead.
it's the same issue with brands in general, whether it's speakers or corporate brands. When
Yeah.
you think that people want to hear you preach about your logo and all the great things, they don't. They want a
Yeah.
heartfelt conversation. They've got their problems they got to fix. It comes in. You got to have a dose of humility and listen to your customers because it's
Yeah.
about them and who we serve, not about the logo. So then let's talk a little bit about follow up because I love aftercare. How do you
Yeah.
create an aftercare action plan to maximize the value for these clients that helps increase income for speakers?
Yeah. I love that you asked that question, right? And when I say that all this stuff is tied together, it really is tied together. Why is it tied together? Because there's a couple of things that go into the aftercare. Now, some things will work for some people, and some things won't. There's no one right business model that exists, but there might be something that actually works for you. Have to share this before giving aftercare. I struggled with trying to do too much in a presentation. And a lot of that was based on self-doubt, some bouts of imposter syndrome, wondering, will my information make sense? Would it work? Would it help people? And so I remember I was doing a presentation, and in 2 hours, I was trying to give them everything I possibly could, right? I was like, yeah, I can't do 90 minutes. It has to be 2 hours because I want it to be experiential and I want to give you some valuable content and good. But I was throwing everything in it because I had this belief, Kenneth, that they wouldn't want me back, that I had to give them everything in that moment because I had one shot and I was going to make that shot count. Now, there are some people and systems and things, associations and things that they may not bring the same speaker back each in a row. But I started challenging my language because of a couple of things. But one person in general, Chris West, the video narrative, he challenged me once. He was like, Justin, I think you're doing too much. And he's like, I want you to take that one keynote and I want you to make it into 4 presentations. And I told him no. I was like, that's not how it works. It's not how I work. And he was like, just try it. He's like, the next time you have a conversation with a client, share this with them. X, thank you so much for inviting me out. I'm really grateful. I have to be honest with you. I don't just do one presentation. I realized I didn't want to be a check the box speaker, but I wanted to have true and meaningful impact on those that I served. And so what we offer is we offer a series of different presentations, whether 2, 4, and or 6, that are able to really drive impact and results in this specific area. And as I did that, it in the first year, it doubled my income, right? And even more importantly, I was able to give more value because I wasn't trying to cram everything down people's throats. I was able to really dive in deep in a specific area and give meaningful help. So, how does that matter to our aftercare plan? One of the things for our aftercare plan is realizing there is more that we can give them beyond just the one event, right? And here are some examples of things that can be beneficial beyond that one event. And some of these I do, and then some of these are other things that other people do. Now, one of those things is tip videos, right? Clint Pulver, you said you mentioned and connected with him and other people that do this. And so I have a series of 12, 26, and 52 tip videos. Mine are 2 minutes. Other people do 1 minute. Some people do 5. But I provide tip videos. I've had a client that booked me, and I was able to provide post tip videos after the event, right? Another example, masterclass, right? So people do these master classes where they're really giving, these bite-sized opportunities, or they've been on masterclass before. TEDx or similar kind of conversation discussion guide where you provide either a template and or a customized discussion guide for clients. I was able to do that for one of my international clients, and I was paid to do this because we took my TEDx and I provided their values and I utilized their values within a discussion guide and created something customized for them. Courses, but good ones. Everybody has a course these days. But are we asking how are people learning? What's happening in the current market? Like right now, micro learning is really, really big. These short 3 to 5 or 5 to 10 minutes, because bite-sized ways that people learn, because people don't have a lot of time, at times 30 minutes, 60 minutes just to sit down and go through one course. But really good. It doesn't have to be the best video and all these kind of great things, even though we have great people even within the NSA community do that. But that's another example. Modularizing your content. So I took that one presentation. Remember, I broke it up into 2 and 4. It's actually now 12 modules that I'm able to go. And so guess what? When I go to a client and it speaks back to one of the questions about, the language I use, when we're sitting down having the conversation and they're saying, hey, I want a conversation on inclusion. What does that look like? I'm like, awesome. I'm really glad. We really do a lot of research in this area. We've seen how it can benefit in really meaningful ways. We have 12 modules on this. I like to go over this with you to identify which 2 or 3 modules you'd like me to cover during the conference. Now, guess what just happened, Kenneth? Normally, they see the list and they're like, oh my gosh, we want all of this, right? Because it's valuable content that can dive into deep areas. And so the general would say, well, this is hard. Let's identify these 2 or 3. Now, guess what? They may have said, hey, I like this. I like 10. I like 11. And in my post calls, and even during that first call, I'm able to say, hey, we can have a conversation later, because one thing that we sometimes are able to do is sometimes our clients bring us in to be able to identify these 2 or 3 modules, but we'll come back and we'll actually be able to engage these other 2 or 3 modules in a meaningful way. Now, that's great for corporations. I've even seen that work, not in the same way, but in associations. I've had associations bring me back the very next conference just to go back over to continue the conversation and go back over 2 or 3 modules that we weren't able to cover in that time. So modularizing your content, asking, can you go deeper in specific areas of your content? Another way is a complimentary ebook, right? Just as added value, not to sell, but when we add value to them, there's nothing wrong with selling your ebook, but what if you created something that was just to give to the clients as added value? Other presentations and or workshops. All right, one of the things we do when we do Your Why Matters Now as a content area, we've been able to add why workshops, because we can't in 60 to 75 minutes, we can't help people to write out and develop their why action plan or their why statement, but we can do that in a workshop. And we've been able to come back and work. We did this recently with a credit union. They brought us back the very next year. They only get like 2 days off to do the why workshops. We're able to actually help them to develop their own workshop. We've also done it virtually. I've also done it online and did a guided discussion on how to create your why action plan. So those are practical ways that we've seen people be able to do that. And last but not least, the bonus of this is if you have a series of workshops that complement each other, share that. Share how other clients have utilized the complementary work of your presentations. I have two keynotes that work really well together, right? And work to a different beat in your why matters now. I talk about the why and work to a different beat, and I tell people, hey, what we've seen is that work to a different beat really works really well as like a kickoff, a catalyst. We talk about the why, but then what could be great, whether next year, and this is what's been even beneficial, Kenneth. Many conferences I both opened and closed because I was able to share how the two work together to flow and help their participants, their attendees, the conference goers to be able to engage in a meaningful way. And so I'll kick off with work to a different beat and I'll close with why your why matters now. And so these are all ways that we can sell beyond a single event, not some slick salesperson techniques, but because we're constantly asking, how can I add more value to the client?
Such a great point.
Attention all aspiring authors. Get ready for the ultimate literary experience at the Leadership Books Author Summit, the premier one-day conference brought to you by Leadership Books. This August 2024, in conjunction with the National Speakers Influence Conference, we're bringing together savvy speakers, marketers, businesses, pastors, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all on-site under one roof to provide you with the catalyst for your book success. Find out more at leadershipauthorsummit.com.
Well, a question I want to ask you from a previous guest is, when you go to work every day and you're sitting down at your desk, what's the one thing in your speaking business that you really want to accomplish in that day before you turn off your computer? What's that one thing that you know, if I do this today, then I will have moved my speaking business forward?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Oof. This is going to sound, it's not going to sound like I'm answering the question, but I really am. The number one thing I can do before I turn off my computer, close it, all that kind of stuff, is answering this question: how did I add more value to my team today? Not everybody has a team, so if you don't have a team, then it could be your clients. One of the things that I have a team of 6, both here in Ghana, and some of them do client interfacing. And for me, I'm asking the question, one of our family values from the company is treat them like family. And so if I'm asking, how did I treat them like family today? How did I add more value to them today? And because I know if I treat them well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to treat our clients well. They're going to ask, how do we treat our clients like family? And it's going to have a profound long-term impact in the work that we do. And so I love going to conferences and places that people talk about Dari, our director of operations. They're like, oh, I love Dari. She's amazing. She's all. And it's not because of me. Dari's awesome by herself. But what if I treated Dari bad? What if I didn't care for Dari? What if I didn't hear her perspective? What if I didn't value and cherish her work and the things that she does? Then it may actually trickle down to our clients, and they may have a bad experience with us. So for me, for those who have a team, that's what I do, is how do I add more value to my team? How did I add one additional thing? And for those who don't have a team, like my buddy Ross, who doesn't want a team, thank you, Ross Bernstein, then maybe it's, how did I add more value to my client today?
Great point. So what is a question that you would like to ask a future guest on this show?
I love to ask the question, how can I be more meaningful with the clients and attendees when I'm off stage? What does being more meaningful with our clients and attendees off stage look like?
Such a great question. All right, let's do a quick recap then, based on the Good Doctor's PhD-like advice. So, number 1, become a thought leader and not a regurgitator. Identify the top 10 people who are thought leaders on your topic. They may not all be speakers. They may not be people that you've even heard of, but they may be real thought leaders. We often look at speakers who are competition, but you also need to look at just smart people who do this work that can help move your thoughts forward. Be a PhD candidate like Dr. Jones-Fosu. So, number 2, use the right language And that's not just in an academic journal speak. It's not just sales pitchy speak. It should come from the heart. And think about what is the language that makes a true impact with adding value. Number 3, with aftercare, find the right model for you. Justin said, as I've done as well, don't do too much. Dive in deep with a specific area and realize that there's more that you can give them beyond the one event. Consider following up with tip videos, masterclass type groups, discussion guides, courses, the good ones. Consider modularizing your content 3 times fast. Complimentary ebooks. Find what works for you. Justin, I can't wait to see you at Influence in Denver. Any last closing thoughts before we get out of here and go register for the show?
Yeah, in our society and stuff today, there's a lot of challenges and things happening, from elections to territories. And my final thought is just for the heart-based aspect, as we all live in communities. It's simply this, is that we can vehemently disagree with people's ideology and yet still passionately pursue their humanity. So I encourage people to, even when you're closed-minded on things, never stop being open-hearted to the people that you encounter.
Great point. Friends, make sure to join us at Speakernomics.com and let your voice be heard. Thank you to Leadership Books for sponsoring this episode. I'm Kenneth Kinney, your host of the National Speakers Association's podcast, Speakernomics, and this has been another fantastic episode of the show. To everyone listening, thank you for the privilege of your time. And remember, Speakernomics is a podcast where you'll learn to speak, get paid, repeat.